Kia ora tātou, welcome to this meeting of the Community and Culture Committee. Welcome councillors, the media and those with a public interest. We do have a presentation to our public forum. I'd like to welcome Joe from Public Health South and Anna from the Heart Foundation who are here to address us. Please join us. The next 5 minutes are all yours.
Thank you. Sorry, it's actually Jo from the Heart Foundation. She's just come along to support me. My colleague Anna Frost no longer works at Public Health South, so it is just me. That's okay, you weren't to know. I've just given out a handout actually, well it's just coming around now. But first of all, thanks very much for having us here to speak today. Anna and I did start some work at the end of last year, and so I'm just following through with what we started. But first of all, I just wanted to thank Council for what has been done so far with Smoke Free. It's a commitment to smoke free. And there is a bit of a snapshot on that front page. One of the things that we're particularly excited about is that Mayor Cull has asked for consideration regarding smoke-free at the Local Government New Zealand conference, so that's really cool. And we really like the fact that the new signage for parks and playgrounds is actually featuring the smoke-free logo, which is awesome. However, we do think that there is still more to be done for the health and wellbeing of our community. And we think that can be done by reducing further the visibility of smoking, especially in public places, and the reduction of exposure to secondhand smoke. Some of the possible ways of doing this, and Anna may have spoken to some of you about this before, but smoke-free social housing, which has been a project that has been successful in Christchurch. There's a fresh air project which focuses on smoke-free outdoor dining, and we're looking at designating other public spaces such as beaches, places like the Octagon, which we have done a survey on in the past, and potentially the Bogle Street area. The reason why we thought Bogle Street could be a potential place for designation of smoke-free, if supported by Council, it's a very up-and-coming place. Obviously there's a lot of heritage and culture there. New restaurants coming up, be good for tourism and the economy. And basically, we just think that having parks and playgrounds, public spaces, is the next logical step to go. We also know that there's no safe level of exposure to secondhand smoke, regardless if you're indoors or outdoors. And even if you're 5 or 10 metres away from someone who's smoking, there's still a risk there. We know that reducing the visibility of smoking helps people who want to stop smoking or who have already stopped smoking as the visual cues are removed. This is for like sight and smell. And we also know that young people are more likely to think smoking is normalised behaviour when they see others do it. What we actually did, and there's information on the back of the flyer that I gave you, is we actually contacted businesses and residents, property owners down in the Bogle Street precinct, and we did this via face-to-face and by letter as well. And we had a total of 44 responses from the 93 people that we tried to make contact with, and the majority, 80% of those people actually supported the idea of having smoke-free. Basically, the idea that we're putting forward is to have smoke-free signage in the area to basically provide positive messaging for those who wish to get support to stop smoking, and as a reminder to people to sort of move away to smoke somewhere else. We're not asking for a bylaw. We don't believe that punishing those people who do smoke is a good idea. We'd really rather just have an educative and supportive approach for the wellbeing of all those who live, work and play in the area. Our vision is that the sign design could be done by local artists that would fit in with the artwork in the area. And something to go along with that is that we probably are aware of e-cigarettes and vaping. It's the new thing. Regulations are currently being considered to control the use of e-cigarettes. And expert opinion is that e-cigarettes are significantly less harmful than smoking, but they're not completely harmless. And one of the things that we'd be advocating for is that if we had smoke-free signage, then in the future we would hope that a smoke-free would include a vape-free as well in those places that are already smoke-free. So basically what we're asking for is to see if you would support us to designate parts of Bogle Street area, particularly that main street, as being smoke-free in the future. And that's
Thank you. Are you happy to take questions?
yeah, sure.
Sure. Councillor Benson-Pope.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your presentation. I'm really interested in the material you've distributed. Can I ask first of all about the response, the consultation response by the business owners and managers around the Octagon in that lower box? Mm-hmm. So the owners and of the cafes and other businesses
Yes.
came out extensively canvassed?
Everybody in the Octagon was surveyed, I believe.
Okay, and there's a 73% support for the whole Octagon being smoke-free?
Yeah.
That's pretty stunning.
It is.
And can I ask you about the other thing that I'm a bit surprised about before I get round to my question, is that I would have thought that our housing would have been smoke-free. It's not. Is that the case?
As far as I'm aware, it's not.
Okay. Well,
I'm not an expert on this, and
that's
my
something
colleague
it's
was.
easy for us to follow up on.
Yeah.
Does vaping feature in any of this?
I wouldn't have thought so at this stage,
So
considering that it's not a
talking about
regulation.
smoking tobacco at the moment.
Yeah.
And the question I really wanted to ask is, it's interesting that you've singled out Bogle Street because of the changes in that area. You'll probably be aware, or you certainly will be in the next little while if you're not now, the city's about to spend a lot of money on a reconfiguration of lots of parts of the central business district, which
Yes.
may or may not, no decisions made, may or may not lead to greater levels of pedestrianisation, changing into shared spaces and so on.
Yeah.
Would it be logical to assume that that's also the sort of space that you would advocate to be smoke-free as well?
Potentially. I mean, we thought, the Bogle Street area could be a good test case to see how well people respond to it. That was the whole idea, really, because with the revitalisation and knowing that you guys are going to be looking at doing other things around town. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Pedantic detail which you may not be able to see. So the Bogle Street one, I'm intrigued. Is the area that you surveyed the area inside the orange box?
Yes.
And so there's a substantial number of owners or residents there that filled out the survey potentially who don't actually necessarily face onto Bogle Street?
Yes, that's correct.
And you didn't by any chance just do the Bogle Street businesses and residents and their view on the proposition, did you?
No, we did the whole,
Yeah.
the whole
You
area.
You didn't cut that then down to, okay.
No.
Because that would, 80% is significantly high anyway, or
Yes.
in fact 91% in some ways. You can say some support for it. Thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your coming to public forum. I was interested to know if you have any overseas examples that have taken an area from smoke-free to vape-free.
I can't think of a particular example off the top of my head, but I do know that it is definitely happening overseas, and I believe that other places in New Zealand will be looking at this same issue.
So that's considered to be
currently.
best practice to do it in a gradual step manner, because of the law that hasn't caught up yet.
Yes, and I think because even though we know that e-cigarettes are safer, we don't necessarily know that they're less harmful or not harmful at all than tobacco smoke, and really it's just about protecting our children, and they can't necessarily determine whether or not someone is smoking a cigarette or using a vape,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Elder.
I'm just interested in you talking about, is there anything, information around, rather than using a bylaw, using notices to encourage certain behaviour? Just some information around that.
Do you mean some research to support that?
Yeah.
I would probably have to go away and look into that a bit more. I guess signage is usually I guess, a less offensive way to sort of approach people. It's just to make people aware. I mean, most smokers are usually pretty considerate anyway.
Yes.
And if they do realise that a place is smoke-free, then they will sort of walk away from that.
Yes,
Yeah.
I quite like that approach, but yeah, I was just interested at your proposal of that and whether there was any background to that. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor O'Malley.
I think it may have just been answered by Councillor Elder's final comment. You're not proposing a bylaw change, it's an
No, we
education
ain't.
only change?
Yeah. No bylaw.
Excellent, thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
I suppose we can't ask staff, since Mrs Graham is sitting here, whether a signage can go up that doesn't relate to a bylaw or to a enforceable
I'm sure we
something.
can in due course. I don't know if this is necessarily
yeah.
the best place to do that, but
No,
we can
that's
follow
fine.
up on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have a question around the social housing idea, smoke-free social housing. I mean, if you broaden social housing out to include emergency housing, would you still be supportive of that idea where you're dealing with far more vulnerable populations? I know when it was banned in hospitals, there was considerable concern from the mental health practitioner community as to what that would do to patients. So, are you not going that far with that?
As far as I understand, the way that we look at it, and it's for places who mental health patients who live out in the community and the houses there, we try to offer support for people. So if they do need to go off-site to smoke, that they're accompanied by a staff member, or they are offered nicotine replacement therapy or some sort of support to give up smoking. It is a difficult thing to address, and without looking further into the social housing work that has been done in other areas, I probably can't get that 100% answer, but I'm definitely happy to research it and come back to you with more information. Yeah.
Nothing further. Thank you. We'll get some clarification around the smoke-free social housing stuff, and you may not be aware that Council are progressing thinking around our smoke-free policy following on from a public forum presentation at the end of last year. So
That's excellent.
we'll keep you posted as to how that develops as well. So
That'll
thank
be
you.
great. So can I forward that information to you about who would be best to contact?
To Ms Adamson would
Okay.
be the best bet. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.